Me to tell you that the world is shit. We all already know. It's a garbage pile, dirt ball extravaganza. The least we can do is ignore our troubles for just a little while and join our friends in Himatsubushi, where we've solved the kidnapping. It's all taken care of. Like, what more needs to be done, really? Like, what more could possibly need to be done? Let's find out. That was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this was my first time actually experiencing it. Yo, Jetstorm, welcome. What else needs to be done, right?
大丈夫ですか?
Realizing that I was awake, a young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seems my body language told him I was conscious. Oh no, a user's weird issue to find out every time. They're like, oh, click this link, scan the QR code. Oh boy, that sounds like fun. The scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from the intense pain shooting all throughout me.
起きないで横になっていてください。頭をだいぶ殴られたようですからね。24時間は特に安静にして容体を見守りたいところです。
Yeah, we gotta stay here for 24 more hours. Fantastic. Where is this?
私の診療所です。入江と申します。よろしく。
I scanned some like Animal Crossing QR codes for New Leaf like back in 2013 or so, probably. I've never used a QR code for anything. I remember that this young doctor was the one in the car headed the opposite way earlier. I take that back. I did one in Fez as well. Like Fez had a QR code that you had to scan and get to get one of the input codes, I believe.
誰かいませんか、大石さんは。
あ、呼んできましょう。診療所の中は禁煙なんで表で吸ってもらってるんです。
Dr. Irie left the room to call Oishi. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, and the voices of the Higurashi heralding the cooling temperature. I felt that the tone of the Higurashi's voices was comforting. Eventually I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Oishi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What had happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The door to the room flew open, allowing Irie and Oishi to enter.
じゃあ命に別状はないんでしょ?
That's just what you want to see when you wake up, Oishi.
ないとお約束はできません。頭に受けた傷は初見だけでは判断が危険なのです。
わかりましたわかりました。
Yeah, but you don't like anything out of the norm, Poncho, so like I understand why you wouldn't like it.
ちょいと彼と二人で話がしたいんです。
Yeah, it kinda does. Welcome, Taylor. How's it going?
よろしいですかね。
ええ、どうぞ。何かありましたらお呼びください。
Oishi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door.
いかがですかお具合は。
It's alright. Just think of that new Manson song.
慣れないことをしたんで全身がボロボロです。
Oishi brought over a folding chair. He was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed.
犯人たちは逮捕されましたか?
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to make more sense within the context of the album. I think we're looking at another mid-tempo slog of an album, though, just based on that being the second track on the album.
とっくに県外へ逃げたか村人にかくまわれているかのどちらかでしょうね。まあ逃がしはしませんが。
大臣の孫は
署で保護しています。
Yep, Maryland mid-tempo. That's basically what I think we're looking at.
ただ東京のあなたのご同僚から一切の聴取は
At the very least, it's not as embarrassing as anything from Eat Me Drink Me, so...
しげちゃんが憤慨してましたっけ?
There's at least that. The kidnapping was a confidential matter, so his custody was also probably being kept under wraps. How the kidnapping of the minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it never happened, would be handled by the brass. If this case ended without the nation going into an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility that the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out, but something like that was no longer my concern. My role in this case was...
ご迷惑をおかけします。公安ってやつはいやらしいところだって思ってるでしょ。
思いません思いません。お互い日の丸から給金もらって仕事してるだけですよ。
Oishi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Oishi, but now that that feeling was gone completely.
今回の事件隠さないで大元にしてくれた方が。
Also, apologies, I sound like shit. It is another allergy day. I have no idea what the fuck is going on. At least the damn shits stayed under wraps while we were doing that 7-hour game of the decade shit, because God, I would have wanted to shoot myself mid-podcast had we done that. And I had been stuffed with these kind of allergies today. That would have just been abject misery.
そうすれば黒幕の園崎本家に少しは迫れるんですが、まあ適当に迫ったところで圧力がかかるんでしょうがね。やれやれです。
大石さんは園崎本家に今後も戦いを？
まさか。いろいろと黒い噂こそ絶えませんがね。園崎家に恨みがあるわけじゃありませんので。
He doesn't have a personal grudge.
君子危うきに近寄らない方がいいんですよ。ね。
Oishi laughed happily that I couldn't help but laugh along.
あ、そうだそうだ。さっき県警から署に連絡があったそうです。あなたのご同僚が名古屋に到着したそうで、今車でこちらへ向かっているそうです。あなたは名誉の負傷ですから東京へ引き上げだそうですよ。そんなわけです。はあ、お疲れ様でした。あなたの沖宮での仕事は無事終了です。
I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words.
大石さんのご協力に深く感謝します。あなたに支払った協力金は無駄にはなりませんでしたね。
あら、冗談のつもりだったんだけどな。
Oishi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my
これ
shirt.
は協力金の返済じゃないですよ。私からあなたへのお小遣いです。
What a nice guy!
この辺は地酒がうまいんでね。東京へのお土産にこいつで買っていくといいでしょう。
What a bro! Oishi flashed me a grin.
もしもあなたの傷が軽いようなら東京へ帰る前にぜひ声をかけてくださいよ。おやつさんも佐藤さんもぜひあなたともう一度卓を囲みたいと言ってましたからね。
やれやれ。参ったな。
今度はこっちも小細工抜きです。純粋に楽しもうじゃないですか。
よく言いますよ。原則の警官があんなに濃い様ができるなんて世も末です。
I wonder if we get more mahjong time.
私どもとね、対等以上に打てるメンツにはなかなかお会いできないもんです。あなたが東京に帰るのが惜しいですよ。
When I heard the words going back to Tokyo from Oishi, I was reminded once again I was relieved from my duties. Soon Yukie would be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend the delivery that I had at one time given up on. When I brought that up, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see Yukie at once.
少し傷が重いふりをして沖宮にしばらく滞在しません？いいお店をいろいろ紹介しますよ。もちろんおごれなんて言いません。
申し訳ないですが、それはまたの機会にします。妻の出産日が近いんでね。早く帰りたいんです。
ありゃりゃ。それは知らなかった。 それじゃあこんなとこにいちゃいけない。早く帰らないといけません。
For a while after that, Oishi asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me.
さて、具合はどうです？起きれそうですか？
ええ、おかげさまで悪くないです。立って歩いても全然平気ですよ。
I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Oishi.
いえいえ、ひなみ沢の病院では落ち着かないでしょうと思いまして。
Oh, why would I not be comfortable at a hospital in Hinamizawa? There is literally no reason I should be worried about this at all.
入江の先生は一晩泊まらせたいみたいなこと言ってますが、犯人もまだ捕まってませんし、一応ここはあなたにとっては敵地になりますからね。
この病院は安全ではないということですか？
まあ、入江の先生も多少は社会的信用のあるお人です。
Exactly, nothing goes wrong in Hinamizawa.
ここにいる限りは何もないとは思いますが、赤坂さんの気分的にめいらないかという方が問題ですね。
I'd relaxed a bit now that things would progress this far, but it was exactly as Oishi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. Exactly. Currently, there have been no murders at all, so it is all good. It's fine. With the only thing left for me to do was leaving. The chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. See, it's fine. But that didn't mean I was completely
そうです
safe.
ね。横になっているだけならホテルのベッドでも同じな気がします。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。私もその方がいいと思います。
At that moment, I caught the glimpse of the clock over Oishi's shoulder. It was the evening. The hours when I could call UPA at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would soon be back at her
ちょっ
side.
と雪江の病院に電話してきます。ロビーに公衆電話とかはありませんか？
新婚さんはそういうの豆だな。確か会計の脇にあったと思います。ここで待ってますから、行ってらっしゃい、行ってらっしゃい。
Oishi, laughing while saying that he was jealous, opened up the window and pulled out a cigarette, even though he was in a hospital room. Appreciative of how considerate Oishi was, I set out to the lobby to find the phone. In just a moment, be right back. I have to answer a phone call. Nah, just some work stuff. I don't have anything to do tomorrow or Friday, so the rest of my week is set. Go me! I won! The lobby was just a short distance down the hall from the hospital room. I thought this hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course it was nothing compared to the general hospital Yukie was admitted to. Running inside a hospital wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. Well, this might actually be lucky for me. I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about, but it would still be embarrassing to have someone listen in a conversation between me and UPA. Oh, geez, they just shut everything down, huh? I'm assuming it's COVID-related? Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. Digging around my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. I was calling Tokyo from here, so it would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver and inserted a coin and dialed the number for Yukie's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. Who remembers rotary phones? 420 blaze it. You got it. Nipa. There you go. You got it. You got it. The number for Yukie's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing it in inevitably took some time. Literally an hour per number. Normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently any time was precious. However, I felt that something was strange as I was dialing the number. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Oh shit, a diagnosis of a relative of an employee. Fantastic. Somehow I felt that I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone, and without feeling that response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out from the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent. While I was wasting time like this, the amount of time I had to spend talking to Yukie shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient.
すみません。
Your grandmother's apartment. Last time I saw one was the last time I had a doctor's appointment, because for some reason they have one in the reception area for kids to play with for some reason. It's really weird. 2 weeks since your last exposure to... Okay, nice. Good. Yeah, that's good. I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass, so I called out. There was an immediate response, and a man who seemed like a pharmacist came over.
どうなさいましたか？
すみません。この電話の調子がおかしくて。
Oh yeah, absolutely. It pays to.
ちょっと見てもらえますか？
You cannot be too proactive in this situation right now. The man came over and tried testing various things with the receiver pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this was someone who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just as I didn't know much about phones, neither would he.
あれ？なんだこれ？
The man held up a cord that was connected to the phone on the wall. It was completely severed.
What?
Oh yeah, yep, maybe a hurricane next week. Yep.
なんだこれ？
Just saw that on the news.
参ったな。
Well, this is a dilly of a pickle. This is a gosh darn diddly dilly of a pickle.
これじゃ電話会社の人に直してもらわないとどうにもならないですね。
Dilly of a pickle. I bet that's a real popular Japanese phrase.
電話でしたら事務室のを使います？
I didn't want the people in the hospital office around while I was talking.
近所に公衆電話はありませんか？
ここを出て道なりに行くと商店街に出ます。そこのどこかの角のタバコ屋にあったような気がするな。行けば見つけられると思いますよ。
Pickle me on! I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you could tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how you looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside. But that's where the whatever that word is, the impetuousness of youth came from. Jesus Christ. Choosing the chance to talk to Yukie for even a little longer, I headed outside in my current state. The literal accuracy of this translation. Yeah, I know, right? Follow the road to the shopping district. Should be able to find one soon enough. But only those 2 lines as my guide, I ran outside the gates of the hospital. With the village nestled in a valley, when the sun is set, it got dark pretty quickly. The sparse street lights lit up enough to start attracting moths. The Higurashi, knowing the time for their chorus was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person at the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was I just getting further away? Just as I was about to be crushed by the wave of uncertainty towering over me, I found a shop on the corner. Cigarettes was written on a small sign. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I had heard at the hospital, sat next to the corner of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch, so I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have much time though, but it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yukie my job was done, I would be coming home soon. Picking up the receiver, I slid a coin down in the slot, but I felt that something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting the coin in one more time, but there was absolutely no response. This phone was dead. It couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt along the cord. It protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hands found the end of a completely severed line. What is this? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. It seemed that the cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some kind. And I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut.
すみません。すみません。
Gotcha. Opening up the booth window of the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there were the sounds of somebody plodding down some stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding lethargic steps, for some reason, only served to make me more frantic.
タバコですかいね。小さまでねんと。
タバコを買いたいわけじゃないんです。この電話が。
Realizing that saying the phone was broken and asking them to take a look at it was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words.
この電話が壊れてるみたいなんで、別の公衆電話があるところを教えてもらいたいのですが。
The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly as if chewing on the meaning of my words. It seemed that she wouldn't understand until she had digested it thoroughly.
電話。そんな
That's
難
a
儀だ
dilly
わ
of a。pickle! What a dilly of a pickle!
他の公衆電話を当たってくださ
This
い。
old lady's smart. The old lady directed me to another payphone that seemed quite a ways away. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right there I could use, I would only be able to tell Yukie goodnight with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone which I didn't know the exact distance to. If I was of a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would have been a natural thought process. But in that moment, I had become somewhat stubborn for some reason. Unable to use the phone at the hospital and coming here and still being unable to use one, there was no mistaking that I had become quite insistent on using a phone.
どうもありがとうございます。その電話ボックス探してみます。
Refusing her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was far away, it would be easy to find. If I just followed this road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'll admit that I was quite steadfast for calling Yukie, but there were days when I was tired or busy when I couldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries, and I was dead tired. On top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be strange at all if today was one of those days where I didn't call her. Oh, God, you people are killing me today. These things are gonna suck. I'm full of allergies and death. There you go. It's full of allergies and death. Enjoy. But having twice been foiled trying to call her, had I become hot-headed about it? Was I like a dog who was being told stay with a piece of food dangled in my
何やっ
face?
てんだろうな。
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. Even so, I somehow couldn't quell the uneasy feeling setting in the pit of my stomach. It was like that when the hospital phone, at the same time, was like that with the hospital phone, and the same at the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicated that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them, but who and for what reason? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt, so I tried to push the thought aside. What is there to be uneasy about? Hey man, phones die sometimes. That's all there is to it. How much had I run so far? The scenery around me was no longer that of a shopping district with residential buildings scattered about on the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly too far for a quick phone call, and it was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw in the tobacco shop. It might be almost time. I had run quite a bit, so my breathing had grown quite ragged. If I had just wanted to hear Yukie's voice, I should have just thrown away my reservations and borrowed the phone in the office. I regretted it a little. Well then, was it about time to give up? Just when I thought that, I saw a light in front of me. I had finally found it. It was a phone booth. We did it! It seemed that the light of the phone booth had recently been changed, so it was shone with a vivid white light. Although in the gloom of Hinamizawa, it was nothing more than a gathering spot for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. As my hand touched the door of the phone booth, I realized that I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was right now, but even if it was just for a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yukie. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without even giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. I was worried that this phone cord might be severed as well. How was the cord on this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as they ran along the corner of the ceiling. At a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wondered if it was popular in Hinamizawa to cut the cords of payphones as some sort of tasteless prank. It might be prudent to talk to Oishi-san about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine this time. Pulling out a coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ear, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was more than a slightly unpleasant feeling. It felt almost sickening. To verify the source of my displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance.
なんだよこれ
The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the phone had been ripped apart, the tip of the cable swaying in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way up the small of my back. It was a type of dread. At that moment, I heard the crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside the darkness. I steeled myself to step out of the phone booth. Inside the phone booth was lit and strong. Give me a minute, son of a bitch. The small of one's back is their lower back. By the way. Sorry. Fucking phone today is driving me insane. The inside of the booth was lit with a strong light, which might have made it warmer in here. Just stepping outside, I could feel a chill wash over me, and there was the silhouette of a person. Oh. A small silhouette.
君は
The long hair of that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze.
怪我人が病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
What are you doing here? Why are you here? Hello, little girl. It is very creepy to approach somebody at night while all of the phones seem to be vandalized in this very small murder village. Yes, isn't it past your bedtime, little bear? Somewhere in my head, I knew who this girl was. I didn't have any basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl.
ねえ、赤坂。
She, Rika Furude, said that in almost like it was a
君
warning.
が
Did you...
電話のコードを
Are you a little vandal? Is that what's going on here? Her expression remained unchanged, and my question was left unanswered. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt that she had affirmed my suspicions.
どうしてこんなことをするんだどうして
The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things out, but she didn't seem very afraid.
もうどうにもならないことです。
He would absolutely call them Little Bear. I interpreted her words as meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital, but thinking about it, that had been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that if the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, there would have been the illusion that time had stopped.
赤坂が私を気味悪く思っているのがよくわかる。
You've given us reason to believe that.
ああいやそんなことないよ
My denial came out almost like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam, but her words were right on the mark. I had always felt something ominous and uncanny about her, ever since her strange threats at the shrine. And it doesn't help when you laugh at me in a weird way, just saying. She had noticed my expressions contrary to my words, seemingly laughing at the gap between them.
赤坂の怖がり。
Wow, we're doing this, are we?
怖がってなんかいないよ
Being laughed at by this small child didn't sit well with me, so I said that.
もう電話を探しても手遅れの時間です。
そうだな
She didn't even have to say it. It was absolutely too late. I might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late. I had no option but to give up for today. Once I decided that, my unhealthy obsession with the phone suddenly faded, even though that it was strange that I was that obsessed. That strange obsession now gone, I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. Just look at what I was wearing. It wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals. My head wrapped in bandages and my body completely soaked in sweat. It was a wonder that the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. With wanting to hear Yukie's voice as my motive, I had traipsed around the town the entire evening. I didn't know whether to call it follies or the follies of youth or simply plain embarrassing. In any case, it was all I could do to not laugh at
もう
myself.
これで今夜赤坂がすることは何もないです。
そうだなもう何もないよおとなしく病院へ引き上げるさ
それがいいのですよ。病院への道は
わかるつもりだよ
She waved her little hand as I began to head back the way I came. She began to follow alongside me. Looking at her face, I could see that she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost.
リカちゃんの家もこっちの方向なのかい
なのですよ。
こんな時間に一人で表を歩いてるとご両親に怒られたりしないかい
別に怒られませんです。今日はご両親は忙しい日なので僕のことなど忘れていますですよ。
それでも帰った方がいいきっと怒るよ
それでも赤坂とおしゃべりする方が面白いのでいいのです。
She said that with a face free from any worry, as she looked up at me once more and smiled. When she showed me that smile, the eerie feelings surrounded her faded. But even then, she was still as mysterious to me as ever. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier, but it was much darker than before, and with the point of view changed on the return trip, I wasn't very confident that this actually was the corner I turned at. There was no mistake. It had to be this corner. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed my clothes.
赤坂は病院へ戻るのではないのですか？
もちろん戻るつもりだよ。道間違えた？
A short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning of the walk to the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on.
?電話のコードを切って回ってたのリカちゃんだろ。ダメだよ、もうしちゃ。
僕には何のことかよくわかりませんのですよ。
Does that look like the face of a girl that would go around cutting phone lines for no weird or ominous reason whatsoever?
本当にかい？
She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face.
ニパー。
No, see? That is not the face of somebody that would go snip phone cords. You can't give a nipa and then go around snipping phone cords. It was obvious she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers just made me want to forgive her. Oh, I'm gonna be a horrible father, aren't I? That momentary lapse in tension was erased by her next words.
孫、無事に見つかってよかったです。
Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I had already learned from Sato-san's info, didn't I? This girl, no, this entire village knew everything since the moment I set foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end, I chose not to. With everything being known already, there was no point in me feigning ignorance.
なんとかね。
There is absolutely nothing wrong with Operator. I've easily listened to that song 300 times in my life.
それはよかったです。これで東京に帰れますですよ。
ありがとう。
I think box number 10 is another good complimentary song to Operator.
赤坂の怪我はひどいのですか？
さあ、ひどいのかどうか、医者の診察を聞いてないからわからないな。
Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remembered being told to lie down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. Did that mean bed rest?
怪我人は病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
Sneaking out of the hospital is a cool Beastie Boys instrumental as well.
電話のコードだって切っちゃいけないんだぞ。
僕には何のことやらわからないのです。
じゃあこっちだって何のことかわからないや。
As we played dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If anybody saw us laughing at each other like this, it would probably bring a smile to their lips.
赤坂が生きてこの村を出られる確率は
Hello?
決して高くあり
What
ま
are you
せんで
saying
した。
to me, little girl?
僕は赤坂に死んでほしくはないので、生きて村を出ることができて嬉しいです。
What?
リカちゃん、
What?
最初っから私の正体は知ってたんだろ？
She said nothing but gave a firm
なら
nod.
分かっていると思うけど、私たちはこの村のどちらかというと敵の部類に入ると思う。なのに君はいろいろと忠告してくれたね。
That's right. She said it at the time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that.
私は君に感謝するべきなのかもしれない
Is this
ね。
little girl basically just saying, listen, you are alive because of me right now? Show some reverence, bitch.
感謝した方がいいのですよ。 僕は命の恩人なのです。
Wow, this girl is really full of herself. Saying that, she puffed her chest up proudly. She said it jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. She said those words with such an adorable smile that it took a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. I'd been to this place before. The Defense Alliance's office was there. It was the stone steps leading up to the Furude Shrine. When I passed by it before, I was so focused on finding a phone booth I hadn't realized where I was.
この神社がリカちゃんの家だったよね。
まあ、そんなものです。
Looking up the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit and energetic voices could be heard. What was going
今日はお
on?
祭りの日なのですよ。
Yo, it's a festival, everybody! Only good things happen at festivals!
お祭り？
ひなみ沢村の唯一で一番のお祭り、綿流しのお祭りです。
綿流し？
祭りなんて名ばかりのつまらないものですよ。見ますですか？
She asked bluntly, but seeing that I looked interested, she climbed up a couple steps and motioned for me to come. I was only going to go back to sleep anyways. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go with her on a little detour. In the hostile territory that was this village, I didn't know what would happen if I ventured down a side road without Oishi. Even though I thought of the village like that, when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt that as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. That's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of Onigafuchi Defense Alliance's territory. Climbing up to the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks from the village, now the executives of the Defense Alliance, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I'd ever seen.
ね。つまんないお祭りでしょ。
これは確かにお祭りには見えないね。
大昔からずっと続いてきたお祭りですが、見ての通り、すっかり寂れてしまったのですよ。
As if to chide the old folks, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It was just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival.
これじゃ祀られる神様も気の毒だな。
こんなみっともないお祭りも5、6年もすると村中が総出でやってきて、ちゃんと儀式も真面目にやる立派なお祭りになるのですよ。
This girl's determined. What she said was not so much wishful thinking as it was telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she's simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded. Even though it was baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she wandered down to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed beside her. Passing through a copse of pine trees, a strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had shown me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery.
こうして眺めると、この村ものどかそうに見えますのです。
She said that with an indifferent look on her face.
君は先日、この村は絶対にダムに沈むことはないと、そう断言したね。
She didn't reply, seemingly relishing the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair.
あの時点でもう大臣が要求に応じていたという意味だった。
Yeah, just give it a goatee. You gotta be careful of saying things like that around here, nerd, because people will do it. People do things in this chat, and they happen. That's how we got despair corn. Listen, I'll show you, nerd. If you are not familiar, let me introduce you to some of our chat friends that have joined us along the way. We have despair corn. I don't think I have Bucket Rena loaded at the moment. We have Dorcorn. We have Shion Nightmare. We have Neon Sanazaki Juice. Those are the only ones I have loaded at the moment. No, we have John Thayer's Beats Disaster, but that is not entirely related. But yeah, we have friends. We've got like Neon Copter. We have so many friends. We have Sad Neon Ice Cream, whose ice cream melted. A lot of these are thanks to Sayara. And some of them are thanks to our good friend June as well. A lot of memes have come of these Higurashi streams. She spun around, her gaze meeting mine, but she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I had just said.
今回の事件は闇から闇へ葬られる。
Yeah, June and Sayara have absolutely over-delivered. Jetstorm did a bucket Rena, who has a bucket on her head. Y'all feel free to link your memes if you got them. Yeah, just post all your shit posts if you got them. By all means, go right ahead. Fill Nerd in. Like, show him the ridiculous, weird fun we have here. People just... I seem to gravitate toward people, and we all kind of have a love of really dumb ideas and dumb things. So it just kind of works out that way.
本庁上層部は多分大臣のスキャンダルが公になってトラブルになることを望まないと思う。
さもないと孫を殺すぞと脅したに違いないのです。
で、大臣との交渉が成功し、孫は解放された。
孫を助けたのは赤坂ですよ。
どうだろう。
Bucket Rena came from one of the tips in Tatari Garoshi where she got a bucket stuck on her head. It was one of the Satoko's trap lessons.
発端となったあの財布の発見。あれ自体がすでにできすぎだったように思う。
Yeah, that wallet did seem a bit convenient. Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I felt something was odd. Oishi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. I felt like they had put up quite a fight, but that might have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't say, "Here you go," and return the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized that this was a kidnapping case and were moving in on it. That's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. So the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary.
僕には難しいことはよくわかりません。
同感だな。私にだって難しいことはよくわからない。だが一つ確実なことがある。君が言った通りってことさ。この村はダム湖になんか沈まない。ダム計画なんてそのうちなくなってしまうってことさ。
That wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that I had to leave the house that I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind.
よかったじゃないか。
どうしてですか？
少なくともこれ
At the
で
very least, oh wow.
この村に
Check it
平和
out.
が戻るよ。
Another cool CG. There you go. That's the one we're using in the thumbnails on the YouTube archives. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 to 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged to the bottom of the dam was still a ways away. But it was no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turned out, from the beginning to end, it had already all been decided. Just as this girl had said, it was decided. There wasn't really a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here, then the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable
平
manner.
和がこの村に？
When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me, but her face remained indifferent and expressionless. Then her eyes narrowed slightly as she
これ
snickered.
から毎年血生臭いことが起きるのに。
Excuse me?
リカちゃん、何の話だい？
As the wind blew her hair about, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while.
私ね、あと何年かすると殺されるの。
What? Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression had been cast in shadow or if she was smiling, amused, or
リ
resigned.
カちゃんがどうして？
とても不愉快なことだけど、それも多分決まってることなの。
決まっているって誰がそんなことを決めるんだい？
それを私も知りたいの。
Turning back to face me, she showed me a resolute expression for the first time. And after staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words.
ここは人の命を何とも思わない連中でいっぱいです。これを伝えても何も変わらないかもしれないけど、でも死という月を映す水面をかき消すためなら小石を投じることもあるかもしれない。
I had no idea what she was trying to say. I had to listen to every word I had to listen to every word with my body and soul, or at least that's what I thought.
来年の今日、そう昭和54年の6月の今日、ガム現場の監督が殺されます。
For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. But the foreman... By the foreman, did she mean the gruff old man I played mahjong with?
殺されるってどうして？
She didn't answer. But she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. It wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No, it was as if she is already reporting the results. That sort of
恐ろ
expression.
しい殺され方をした後、体中をバラバラに引き裂かれて捨てられてしまいます。
バラバラ殺人。
その翌年の昭和55年の6月の今日、聡子の両親が突き落とされて死にます。
Satoko. It was the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's
あるい
story.
は不幸な事故。
The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with that lifeless look in her eyes.
さらにその翌年の昭和56年の6月の今日、私の両親が殺されます。そしてさらに翌年の昭和57年の6月の今日、聡子の意地悪おばが頭を割られて死にます。そしてさらに翌年の昭和58年の6月の今日、あるいはその数日後か、私が殺されます。すべての死が予定調和なら、最後の死もまた予定のうちなのでしょうか。でもならばこれは一体誰の予定なの？
You might even say these are deadly premonitions. The village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were at the discretion of those who control the village, but that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way that the last death would fit with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals, but their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. But the last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. What a sentence. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that?
私は幸せに生きたい。望みはそれだけ。大好きな友人たちに囲まれて楽しく日々を過ごしたい。それだけなの。それ以上の何も望んでいないの。
リカちゃん。
死にたくない。
The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in at the end. Eventually, we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital, it must not be that serious. The girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one from just before, predicting her own death and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly and lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were at the core of an extremist resistance group. Even if it was a shell of its former self, it was a festival where people in the village gathered so that 20-some-odd folk here should have included some of the village executives and other important members. Among those was no doubt there were members that were at the Sonozaki Family Council in attendance, meaning even if we met face-to-face before, there were people here who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why, without even saying anything, it soon became obvious that I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo, drinking while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villagers, and empathizing with the rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished. His grandson was in police custody. Everything was over. I might not have to be put in another perilous situation. To me, they were the only adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there was no reason that I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visited this village, would it return to being a tranquil and peaceful place? If that happened, I might be able to take a relaxed walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was in the middle of the night. The girl had at some point disappeared. It seemed that her parents had told her to go home and sleep. when she let out a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me as much as they laughed. I was just there drinking, so I had thought to help a bit with the cleanup. However, my help was refused on the grounds that I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Looking at the battle against my sleepiness in the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly, searching for a back entrance until somebody on the night duty found out and let me inside.
こんな時間までどちらへ？入江先生も心配してましたよ。
ご迷惑をおかけしました。神社でお祭りの人たちに引き止められまして。
ああ、そういえば今日は神社で町会の人たちが集まって飲むとか言ってたな。それはご愁傷様でした。傷は大丈夫ですか？
ちょっとズキズキしますね。多分アルコールのせいだと思います。
そうだ、お連れの刑事さんが連絡が欲しいと言ってましたよ。
いけない。大石さんを待たせてたんだった。
I glanced at the clock. No matter how you looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I'll apologize to him tomorrow over the phone. Somehow! I returned back to my hospital room and slipped into a bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Oh, that's so good. I had to turn off the lights, but my weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. Well, it looks like we did it, everybody! We did it! We survived! It's fantastic! We did it! We solved the mystery. We got 3 big old tips. Let's see what we got here. A mother's diary. What do we got? What do we got? There was something I didn't like about my child. I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books or about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. If they aren't able to feel loved, even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to, then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably harder to express with mere words. I just want my child to be average. As long as they aren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. But my child has been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the other kids broke their equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it would still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is that if the aforementioned situations happened again, they'd now act in a different manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that as a parent. Why are they indifferent about the field trip, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about the picture book, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about this bento, but happy about this one? The former and the latter in each situation seem exactly the same to me. There was even times when I thought the former was the better. I don't understand that child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teacher always says the same thing, and I would always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband, always the optimist, once said that a young child's feelings were different from an adult's, so if there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I lament my lack of urgency. One day, when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu that my child would enjoy, but she only smiled in a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. On a day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had hung up to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down. But she, watching me trying to pick up the laundry in a panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I've been a bad mother. Thinking I should regain her trust, I thought to get back little by little with some light interactions. Seeing her do some sort of craft work on the veranda, I called out to her.
ここ数日、気持ちのいい晴れの日が続いて、気分がいいわね。
The child, with an indifferent look on her face I hated so much, looked up at me for a moment, then without a word returned to immersing herself in her craft work. Up until now, I would have hit her in the head for that. I held myself back.
何を作ってるの？お人形さん？てるてる坊主。
A child is using her inserts from a newspaper to definitely make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain, but that child, in her own way, was praying that these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. Bringing out a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute weather charms from the eaves of the house.
ダメよ、リカ。頭が重すぎるから。ほら。逆さてるてる坊主になっちゃ
Yeah,
う。
like that's a weird thing. Yeah, like, I keep hitting my child. I don't understand her. I don't understand her. When I don't understand her, I hit her. Why doesn't she like me? It's real weird.
これじゃ、晴れじゃなくて、雨になっちゃうわよ。
When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my skirt as if to stop me.
逆さになるように作ったのだから、それでいいの。でもリカ、てるてる坊主が逆さじゃ、晴れのおまじないにならないわよ。雨が降るようにおまじないをしているから、それでいいの。
I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside of me. I was trying desperately to understand my child and not beat her about the head.
お庭の朝顔が晴れ続きで元気がなくなっちゃったから、雨が欲しいのね。
I just have this incredible urge to give my child a concussion. I don't understand. The child turned to me with an expression that I hated the most.
晴れにね、飽きたの。
I don't understand. I don't understand. I just can't understand that child. A second mother's diary. This one's probably a bit more uplifting, I bet. Probably gonna get better. During the family council, she buried herself under Orio-sama's futon again. Orio-san dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Orio dotes on her exactly like you would a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that. Until Orio-san had said 3 times that it was fine, I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lends an ear to any of my chidings. Knowing that Orio-san's standing was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that's unbefitting her age either. In any case, not only Orio-san, but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day I was surprised. By chance, on the way back from some shopping, I saw her by herself just outside the candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there, and then started eating it. She didn't make any attempt to pay for it, and she didn't even think of looking around. It's a weird way to enunciate that. It didn't even feel like she was shoplifting, more like she were brazenly eating snacks that was offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave her a ridiculous excuse that he had said that it was okay that the child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around, and it began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Furude family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, it was something I had heard often from my grandmother. If by chance that the child I gave birth to was a girl, that child would be the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. All the older folk believe she's the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama and spoil her rotten. And not only did they spoil her, they even told her that she was the living incarnation of Oishiro-sama, that she was a divine power and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. That's a good way to picture it. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody that it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to stop telling her all these strange things, but there was no uprooting the elderly people into deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her, and myself who only scolded her, there was no wonder who she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she had become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt that they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there would be no doubt that my child would have been cute and normal. And A Mother's Diary Part 3. Okay, this is where we make the turn. This is where we make the turnaround. I'm sure of it. One sunny Parent-Teacher's Day, there was a cooking class, and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using their kitchen knives, that child was wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on her face, saying that it must be the result of learning at home. I managed to play it off with a vague smile and a nod in response. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then, she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them into the pot in the order which took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy with their child's actions, but in my case it was different. There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice when I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking that, I quietly fell into an unpleasant mood. When I asked, it seemed she could also sew and do the laundry. I had never taught her how to do those, and again, she never saw her do it around the house, be it cooking or sewing or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the elderly villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish while I wasn't looking. And not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Oishiro-sama. I said as much to my husband, suggesting that we should keep our child away from the elderly folk, but my husband, who was in a position of being a head priest at the Furude Shrine, had little power against the elderly who supported it. He took the rather uncommitted stance of saying that as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that she was our child and should be a completely normal girl. That what the elderly were expecting, that she was living incarnation of Oishiro-sama, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believed that the child has divine powers. We would discuss the weather for the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. Rather than having a clairvoyance, that was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. The things that she knew she should have known, which were just a result of people who were trying to indoctrinate her and the people who were gossiping, getting together in the village. However, there were certainly days when everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day and that child would stubbornly not go without an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end, we would be saved. There might also have been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought she must have heard it on the break of the radio or something. Knowing things she shouldn't have, something like that was in front of me right now, wasn't it? The child was making curry rice, and there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how to. No, that couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody had taught her, indoctrinated her. When I wasn't taking care of her, somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something.
フルデさんのカレーは大変見事です。先生、花丸をあげちゃいます。ニパー。フルデさんはお料理を誰に習いましたか？やっぱりお家で？はい、お家なのですよ。
The other parents in attendance were impressed. Lies. All lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal average daughter, not the living incarnation of Oishiro-sama. Weird! Getting the parental lore now. So we're going to take a quick save here. And be right back with what should be the final chapter. Exactly! How dare people teach her life skills instead of just hitting this dumb child on the head. So we'll be back in like 5 minutes or so, and then we will continue on to the end. Alright. How we doing, everybody? We ready? We ready to get back on? Ready to take this train to the end? Where do we go from here? Like, what is even going on at this point? You must be asking. Well, I will not make you wait any further.
それは誰もが忘れそうなほど地方の小さな村の出来事。悲劇は幕を閉じ、その傷跡も消え去ろうとしていたある日、青年はかつて出会った少女に思いを馳せる。あの日聞けなかった言葉、あの日果たせなかった約束、その後悔と慟哭が閉じられたままだった運命を開く一つの光となった。暇つぶし。運命は幸せだけじゃない。でも不幸を望む人なんて誰もいない。
Midsummer 1985. We are jumping back to 2 years after everything. Is this where it gets interesting?
パパってば。
ああ、
大丈夫？怖い 夢でも見たの？
Miyuki was sitting next to me. I quickly patted her head, hearing her say that. I must have had a bad dream while sleeping in the cabin. I was sweating profusely.
いや、なんでもない。ちょっと暑かったかな。
I tried to wipe away the sweat while answering, but looked around for a handkerchief or towel. And then a cold drop ran down my forehead. Miyuki turned to me and smiled and wiped my face with the towel she received at
ありがとう、ユキ。
Thanks to her, I was finally able to shake off my slumber, so I got up from the aisle seat and looked out the window. I rubbed my arms around Miyuki in the window seat and listened to the noise as the land and sea blew past our eyes.
北海道だ！でっかい道！北海道！
And then the plane gently turned before entering the airport runway. Arriving at the lobby, I glanced around looking for Oishi, and was met with a familiar gruff voice calling out to me.
Akasaka-san! ね何年ぶりでしょう。ご無沙汰しておりますね。
大石さん、本当にお久しぶりです。
Oishi clapped his hand down on my shoulder, celebrating our reunion. The bromance
赤坂
returns!
さんもだいぶいい顔つきになりましたね。最前線の捜査官らしい顔つきですよ。
大石さんはだいぶスマートになりましたね。背筋も良くなったような。これも社交ダンスのおかげですか。
赤坂さんもね、若いうちからダンスはやっておいた方がいいですよ。そしたらきっとモテます。モテモテ。
Did he get his paycheck for a job well done yet? Well, he might have. We are 5 years past the fact now. We are 2 years past the fact, so maybe that check's in the mail. I wish he had retired and moved to Sapporo. In all things, he had started taking ballroom dancing lessons. He had apparently gotten really into it and had decided to spend the rest of his new life devoted to that hobby. He was aiming to get his instructor's qualifications before he hit 80 and live out his old age dandily.
おやそちらがひょっとして
Aww! Aww! She's got a Sprite! I didn't know she had a Sprite! Now let's check the others. She's got it. Nope, she doesn't have one in Manga Gamer and definitely doesn't have one in the original. However, my daughter was frightened and hid behind my
ほら、
back.
みゆき。ちゃんとご挨拶しなさい。
She was staring at Oishi with a dubious expression while tugging at the hem of my shirt. She's usually not this shy. I wonder what's
すみ
wrong.
ません。いつもはこうじゃないんですが。
いいんですよ。おじさん顔が怖いからな。よかったらお名前を聞いてもいいですか？
赤坂みゆき。7歳です。
She's 7 years old.
こんにちはです。
いいお返事です。さすがは赤坂さんの娘さんですよな。
Oishi gently stroked Miyuki's head and smiled as she were his own grandchild. After finally seeing that, Miyuki smiled in relief. Shortly afterwards, Miyuki told me that she was just doing what I had told her to do. Be careful around strangers. Oishi overheard it and let out a hearty "Wah-ha-ha!" shaking his body while laughing and walking. I let myself into Oishi's car and we headed out towards the Hot Spring Inn. I had originally intended to crash at Oishi's place, but Oishi was quite obstinate that his home wasn't suitable for that, so it came to this. At the end, we relaxed while soaking in the hot springs and ate a delicious feast until we were full. Miyuki had a little of the Mongolian barbecue and was delighted with it. After our bellies were swollen, Miyuki grew sleepy and went off to bed. Then Oishi and I reminisced about the time we played mahjong together in Hinamazawa. It seemed that to celebrate our reunion, Oishi had looked for people who could play, but unable to find a suitable candidate, we had to give up on putting together a table. Well, rip to all of our hopes of another great showing of mahjong. As we drank together, we excitedly recounted our exploits during the final manhunt.
結局あの犯人の2人は捕まったんですか？
いいえ。
Oh wow, check this! Look at this! Now there's a look. We got costume changes? Oh dear God! I think this is a little too much for me. Oh no! Oh, that's oh boy. That's oh! Oh man.
結局山狩りでも見つけられませんでした。
That's a lot of Baroishi chat.
多分
Welcome,
村
John.
にかくまわれ
Hope
て
your
か
evening
ら
is going well.
海外か遠方でほとぼりを冷ましてるんじゃないかと思いますね。
Like a man boob ready to just slip on out. Oishi's wondering if he should just slip out of something a little more comfortable for you.
大石さんは確か犯人の銃の一丁を奪いましたよね。あれからは
海外の軍用拳銃でした。関西系の暴力団組織が大量に密輸したうちの一丁でしょうな。戦場痕を調べましたが、他の事件とのつながりは何も出ませんでした。そっちでは？
私はあの後しばらく現場を離れましたのでよくは知りません。結局全部闇の中ってことで決着したようですがね。
Oishi smiled wryly as he sipped his chilled drink.
あの後は大変でしたね。今年で7年ですか。
ええ、先日7回忌の法要がありました。岐阜とも最近は疎遠でして準備でいろいろ苦労しました。
それはお疲れ様でした。
It was then that the hostess brought in extra drinks that we had ordered before. While the bottles of beer clanked as she brought them in, we halted our conversation. What Oishi meant when he said it must have been tough. Thinking about that was still hard, but time had healed the wound. It was the day after, when I phoned Oishi to apologize. When I did, Oishi almost immediately handed the phone to one of my colleagues, who happened to be there. Not only was I injured in the brawl with the suspects, but I had disappeared to drink late into the night without leaving any sort of contact information. So I thought he'd definitely be mad. However, all he said was he had something he couldn't talk about over the phone and that I should come to the station as soon as possible. At the time, I could only think that he must have been really pissed off. But when I arrived at the station, he said this.
君の奥さんが事故に遭ったらしい。
Oh. Having no idea what happened, I borrowed the phone to contact the hospital Yukie was staying at. After being given the runaround several times, I was finally able to talk to someone in charge, and after mincing words for quite some time, they told me.
赤坂幸恵様が事故でお亡くなりになりました。
The world became a blur as I sat there dumbfounded. Yukie's death was unbelievably abrupt, unbelievably sudden. I could have understood if there was some kind of problem during the birth, but Yukie's death wasn't by anything like that. On the stairs on the way up to the roof, she just happened to slip and fall. And she just happened to fall in an unfortunate place at an unfortunate angle. That was it. Wanting to blame Yukie's death on somebody, I began to think that it was an act of revenge by the Defense Alliance, that they killed my wife and made it look like an accident. What I learned when I flew back to Tokyo, however, was much more cruel than that. Yukie had a habit of going up on the roof to cool off in the evening. There was an elevator up to the 7th floor, but from there you had to take stairs to get to the roof. Even late in her pregnancy, when the evening came, she would always head up there. Her father had always said for her not to push herself, but Yukie insisted that until that time she had no choice but to stay in bed, so she should be allowed to do what she wanted. However, I had never once seen Yukie go up to the roof. I had only heard that from her father and the nurses. That was because whenever I visited her, she would spend the time with me instead. I heard the reason why Yukie went up on the roof from a nurse she had become friendly with. She had said that her husband was away on a business trip at the time, and that whenever he called, she was able to cheer him up and give him courage. But when he didn't call, she couldn't do that. Her husband might put on a show of bravado, but in reality, he grew lonesome pathetically fast. She was probably just the same. Whenever he left for business, not clear when he'd be back, she felt very lonely. Whenever she cheered him up, she was actually cheering herself up as well. That's why, whenever he went far away on an important job, on the evenings he didn't call, at the very least, she felt that standing underneath the same sky, her feelings would reach him. At that moment, I remembered the words the girl had told me, that it was best that I go back to Tokyo right away. Otherwise, there would be something I'd regret horribly. Yes, that's it. Because I was away on a business that day, Yukie had headed up to the roof. Had I known this would have been the result, had I done as the girl had said and dropped everything to head back to Tokyo, I might have been with Yukie on the day that she died. If I was with her, she wouldn't have gone to the roof. The day my wife died was on the evening of the 3rd day of my trip. Yes, it was the night before the time I had the sudden urge to hear Yukie's voice and ran around the village trying to find a phone. The girl had gone around and cut all the phone cords. If she hadn't, and I had made the call, I would have undoubtedly learned of Yukie's death at the time and collapsed in tears. Of course, even though the cords were cut, it had only put off learning of Yukie's death by that one evening. In the end, I had learned of it the next morning. However, when I managed to put my emotions in order, I realized it was the girl's small token of consideration.
そんな話は初めて聞きました。
ええ、私も初めて話します。
偶然では超能力じゃあるまいし。
大石さんは教えてくれましたよね。あの子はお社様という神様の生まれ変わりではないかと言われてるって。
まあ村の年寄りどもはフルで理科に神通力があると信じてるようでしたがね。
神通力?
Oishi had originally said it as kind of a joke, but realizing I was serious, he slumped his shoulders.
まあ嘘か本当か知りませんがね、未来のことを予言してみせたり、知らないはずのことを話してみせたり、千里眼だの天の啓示だの、まあいろいろです。もちろん具体的な実例は何一つありゃしないんですがね。
My Oyushiro can't be this cute. My Oyushiro might be a clairvoyant. It's the name of the new anime. Anybody else tired of really long and labored anime and manga titles right now? Like that being the big thing where every title's got to be 27 words long now. Is anybody else just kind of sick to death of it, or is it just me?
Yukieの事故を予言してみせました。
Oishi tried to laugh it off, but out of respect for my deceased wife, he kept it restrained.
現職の警視庁の敏腕捜査官が神通力やらたたりやらを信じるわけで。
Having him say that so bluntly, I couldn't respond. Of course, I had no intention of believing such odd things, but he could only say that because he didn't know what I did. Since I met that other girl, who both was and wasn't Rika Furude, I couldn't deny the existence of any
予
other
知でな
worldly
く予
entity.
告の可能性ももちろん否定できません。
Not prescience, but a warning. If what that girl had said was a warning about Yukie's incident, then things became much easier to understand. Basically, the line of thinking became that it was a threat. Because I didn't go back to Tokyo, my wife was killed in a way that made it look like an accident.
奥さんの事故の検証に不備は？
Yeah, I can't tell. Like, I just know that when it started, I was like, okay, like, that's funny. Because that was a thing that I used to do when I named things. Is I would name them something long and stupid. And then anime and manga just started doing it non-stop. And I was just like, wow, this is real stupid and annoying now. And I absolutely hate it.
もちろん謀殺の可能性も疑いました。現場検証の書類は全て目を通しましたし、私が独自に調査もしました。
There weren't any witnesses to Yukie's fall. There was the possibility that somebody was hidden, waiting to push Yukie down the stairs. However, the cleaning ladies frequented the roof to hang laundry, and the security cameras on each floor hadn't recorded anything out of the ordinary. There wasn't anything set up on the stairs, and I wasn't able to find anything suspicious.
結局、独自の検証の結果でも、Yukieが単独で事故を起こしたとしか考えられませんでした。まあ確かに大臣の孫を誘拐して脅迫してのけた連中です。妊婦一人を階段から突き落として証拠を残さないなんてできないことじゃないのかもしれない。
Oishi's expression had completely sobered up.
奥さんは連中に殺された。
When Yukie died, I thought that as well. More precisely, I wanted to blame somebody, so I created the most viable scapegoat. But without any clear evidence, the violent notion faded along with the wounds in my heart.
あの少女は私に妻の死を予告し脅迫したのか。
Yeah, like, it feels like they're just trying to outdo each other at this point.
それとも妻の死を予言し救う道を示したのか。そのどちらかなのだとしたら私は後者ではないかと考えます。
Oishi smiled slightly in disbelief as he poured more beer from his bottle.
じゃあいいですよ。赤坂さんの言う通り、古出理香は未来がわかる預言者だとします。なら、なぜあの大災害が予知できなかったんです？
That disaster.
あんな恐ろしいガス災害が起こると知ってて、どうして黙っていたんです？
Okay, so we know the gas disaster happened.
ほんの数時間前でもいい。
We know that God took a big old fart on Hinamizawa, and now it's gone.
もし村に知らされていたら、ほとんどの人は死なずに済んだかもしれないじゃないですか。
It was near the end of June 1983. Volcanic gases from the Onagafuchi swamp erupted and hit the village in the middle of the night. It was an unprecedented disaster where the whole populace was wiped out. It caused a wave of panic about volcanic gas across the country, causing people to overreact over any reports of odd smells. I hadn't heard of the blockade of Hinamizawa area being lifted, so it should still be cordoned off.
それは
It was my turn to be lost for a response.
まあでも、お社様の生まれ変わりである古出理香が殺されたので、村がお社様の怒りに触れて、それで沼から瘴気が湧き出して村を死滅させたんじゃないかって。そういう話が確かに南沢系の生存した人間たちの間でまことしやかにささやかれてたのが事実です、ね。
Well, there's nothing weird about Oishi being in Okinomiya.
大石さん、失礼。今殺されたとおっしゃいましたか？
え？ああ、うん。まあ赤坂さんになら話しても問題ないか。
And thus the prophecy comes true. When I saw the news about the gas disaster, I remembered that girl, and And then I found her name on the list of victims. That's why, at the time, I thought her own death had been predicted was due to the gas. It was after that I learned from the tabloids a series of mysterious deaths in Hinamazawa during the 5 years leading up to the disaster that had become known as the Curse of Oishiro-sama. And that string of mysterious deaths lined up exactly with what the girl had predicted, so I had always thought to ask Oishi about it, as he had been involved in the investigation. That's right. That was the reason for our reunion. But right now, Oishi had said, Rika Furude didn't die in the disaster, but was killed?
最後の年のたたりについて聞かせてもらってもいいですか？
私、退職したとはいえ、守秘義務がありますよ。
中井さん、すみません。お冷やで、ちょっとグレードの高い地酒はありませんか？種類はお任せします。
いやいや、そういうつもりで言ったんじゃないんだけどな。
Oishi laughed loudly, not wholly unsatisfied. He stopped the hostess to tell her that the cheap booze was fine.
私も週刊誌で報道されている通りのところまでは知っています。でも大災害の年のたたりは全く知りません。
例の大災害のせいでひなみ沢地区全域が封鎖されちゃいましたからね。最後の年のたたりについてはほとんど捜査ができてないんですよ。何年か後に封鎖が解けたとしても村人のほとんどが死んでますし、数少ない生存者も親戚の元なんかに散って所在がほとんどわからないですからね。完全に迷宮入りです。
Oishi seemed to postulate to himself as he stared at the ceiling, as if trying to work out a memory from the rusty cogs in his head. And then he said in a completely sober voice,
週刊誌なんかじゃ5年目のたたりが大災害だ。本当の5年目のたたりはちゃんと綿流しの祭りの当日にあったんですよ。富武二郎っていう旅行写真家がいましてね。彼が犠牲に。
Oishi gestured about the victim, tore out his own throat with his fingernails as he talked.
で、その富武氏の恋仲の女性が山中で焼死体に。お隣の県警さんがあんまり協力的じゃなかったもんで、こっちはあまりよく状況を知らないんですがね。
一夜にして犠牲者が2人も。
実はね、2人どころじゃ済まないんですよ。その翌日になんですがね、私の後輩の熊谷君が捜査中に車両ごと蒸発しましてね。
There we go. Gonna be doing that a lot more often lately, I think. Sorry about that, folks. Kumagai was a younger detective that was going to be partnered with Oishi after we first met.
富武氏の事件捜査のために村に聞き込みなんかに回ってたんですよ。何かの事件に巻き込まれたのかもしれない。私と一緒だったなら無事だったかもしれないと思うと今でも悔しいですよ。
Do you see icons by people's names like the no sign, a time, like a clock, and a trash can? Because I have icons, but I don't know if that's because I use franker faces or not. Because in chat I have like a, you know, the no symbol, a clock, and a trash can. Oh, I think you just type /ban and the user's name. Then that'll take care of it. Yeah, just do a /. Like that. Without the quotes, obviously. Yeah, like you can run mod view as well. But I think I have those in, like, I just have them in the chat window because I use franker faces And I think that extension might just go ahead and put those in your chat anyway, if you're a mod. So I've just been using Franker Faces so long, it all kind of blurs together as what's naturally on Twitch's end and what's not.
あの日どういうわけか私お腹をひどく壊しましてね。外回りは遠慮しちゃってたんですよ。
事件の真相に近づきすぎて消された。
So another cop disappeared.
と思ってます。クマちゃんは善と有望な若者だったけど、まだ現場経験が不足してた。
Oh, it's not a problem.
トラブル慣れしてなかったんです。
We should have admitted the fact that he wasn't that he wasn't with his subordinate
で
that day.
さらに翌日ですね。ああ、彼のことは赤坂さんもご存知ですよね。ほら、入江先生ですよ。覚えてます？
ああ、あの病院の若い先生ですね。ぼんやりと覚えてます。
彼ですね。どういうわけか睡眠薬で自殺しまして、遺書の類はなし。司法解剖の結果でも睡眠薬によるものと断定されました。動機以外に不審な点はなし。
睡眠薬での死に見せかけるのはそんなに難しくないんじゃないですか。他殺の可能性は。
独身で離婚歴もなし、特定の女性と付き合っていたという話もなし、少年野球チームの監督を務め、村人との親交もあり、誰からも好かれる人物。敵が見当たりませんね。まあそれを調べるにも、もうあの大災害でめちゃくちゃになっちゃいましたからね。今となっては彼の身辺を調べようもありませんが。
それでフルで理科の死は？
その当日です。昼頃に神社に訪れた村の老人たちがフルで理科の死体を発見しました。
他殺？
ああ、話す前にそのイカそうめん
Yeah, you don't want to be eating
食べちゃってきた
something real slimy and gross hearing about this one, I bet.
無体な死に方。
At least she nodded firmly.
死体は神社の境内、賽銭箱の脇でした。もっとも閉めたのは他の場所でしょうね。全裸で裸足。足の裏は汚れてませんでしたから。
愉快犯の犯行？
司法解剖の結果、そういった痕跡は認められませんでした。
Thank God they didn't go that route. Oh, I was real worried about that.
分かったのは、薬物で昏睡させられてからあの場所へ運ばれ、腹部を切開、意図的に臓器を引きずり出して四方に散らしてみせました。
昏睡？では回復は死後ではなく？
Yep, the anime did not hold back. Even the CG they used in the visual novel was a little more like easy to handle, I guess.
なんて。
The girl's prediction was right on the mark. I'm pretty sure she was more detailed about the other deaths that led up to her own. For example, I think she said that the housewife that was beaten to death in the 4th year had her head split open. Then in that case, did she know her own death would be so terrible? There must have been some moments where she wanted to doubt the validity of her own predictions, but as people died exactly as prophesied, as the years passed, that prophecy would only come closer to fruition. And then, facing the final year, unable to struggle against her own destiny, her all-too-young life was snuffed out. And in such a cruel way. Yeah, in the CG they use in the game, they have like crows covering pretty much everything. You get the gist of what happened, but they don't actually show it. The anime has a little more detail going on. Knowing that her days were numbered and unable to fight the tide of events heralding her end, my heart ached at her helplessness.
この死に方ですが、どうも単なる猟奇趣味ってわけじゃないみたいなんです。と言いますのはですね、ひなみ沢はかつて鬼が住んでたって話は以前もしましたよね。
そんな話も聞きました。
ひなみ沢村のお祭りの綿流しってのはそもそも綿流し、つまり臓物流しから転じたものらしいんです。なんでも人食い鬼たちが犠牲者をばらして内臓を川に捨てた。
つまりひなみ沢村においては内臓を引きずり出すことに
The anime, it's not full on gore. It's just you have a better idea of what happened. Like, they don't actually show entrails being pulled out or anything like that. It's not super gross. But you do get a bit more of detail on the body. And it's still pretty covered up. But it's a little more jarring, I think, than what we got with the CG in the last arc.
で、ひなみ沢村の昔話によるとですね、人食い鬼と人間が仲良く暮らすための調停者としてお社様という神様が降臨しているってことになってるらしい。
確か古出理香はそのお社様の生まれ変わりだと言われてるんでしたね。
ええ。ですからその荒人神である古出理香を回復して殺すのは村の信仰に対するこれ以上ない冒涜行為と言えるわけです。
信仰への冒涜、それはつまりお社様への冒涜ということですね。
あとは赤坂さんも知っての通りです。お社様のたたりが起こるのはその晩のことです。
ひなみ沢大災害。
You realized something. The official explanation was that some swamp upstream erupted with toxic volcanic gas which enveloped the village. Save it for
発生した
predictions?
沼は
Fantastic.
鬼ヶ淵沼と言いまして、ひなみ沢村の旧名鬼ヶ淵村の名前の源となった沼です。村の言い伝えではこの沼の奥底は地獄につながってるそうで、かつて
できすぎですね。
That miserable
い
tree.
やいやいや、まだまだできすぎてますよ。
That miserable tree is what Sayara turns into when he gets a headache. It's the living manifestation of his headache.
村には伝承がありまして、お社様がお怒りになられると地獄の釜が開いて正気があふれ出すなんて言うんですよ。
村人にとって地獄というのは沼の底のこと。つまりそこから正気があふれ出して村を襲うということ。
Not liking your realization very much. As in, you don't like the implications or you just don't like it. Like, as in, oh no, that's just bad. That's not gonna work.
つまり古出理香子とお社様の生まれ変わりが冒涜される殺され方をしたので、お社様がお怒りになってたたりとしてあの大災害を起こしたと。そういう話がまかり通っちゃってるんですよ。
つまりあの大災害は人為的なもの。
The disaster wasn't a natural.
確かに話ができすぎてますからね。お社様のたたりが実在せず本当の偶発的事故でもないってんならそう疑いたくもなりますよね。
A wry smile formed on Oishi's face as he listened to my absurd tale on he listened to my absurd take on things. He wore an expression as though, even if it were absurd, there was a time he had thought the same thing as
村の
well.
信仰をめぐって狂信的な一派があったと仮定し、彼らがお社様のお怒りがあるような状況を作り出し大災害を実行してみせた。
もちろん私は笑いませんよ。私も一度ならずともそう考えたことはあります。ですがひなみ沢村がいかに小さい村とはいえ人口は1000人以上。 それを一夜にして抹殺するなんて、どう考えても現実的じゃないです。
The gas eruption was believed to have happened around 2 a.m., several hours before dawn. That short amount of time going around and killing all the villagers in a way that made it look like poison gas didn't seem feasible at all.
ガスの発生した沼もまた宗教的な意味がありましたよね。だとしたら沼に何か仕掛けがあって神の裁きをいつでも再現できるような何かがあったとか。
自衛隊の発表では沼が発生源だということになってますよね。調査チームとかが詳しく調べた上での発表ですからね。そんな仕掛けがあったら見つけてると思いますけどね。
沼そのものに仕掛けがあるとは限りませんよ。ほら、聞いたことありませんか？遠くの泉の水が枯れたら村の泉も枯れたなんて昔話。
何ですかそりゃ。
水源ってのは地下水脈等でつながっていることが多いんです。沼や泉はそれが地上に露出した部分に過ぎません。
つまり赤坂さんが言いたいのは、鬼ヶ淵沼とつながった別の沼か泉があって、それに何らかの仕掛けをすると鬼ヶ淵沼の圧力とか水圧とかそういうものがいろいろ変わって毒ガスが噴出する仕掛けを大昔の村人がこさえていたと、そういう話ですよね。
Oishi laughed heartily, commending the fact that the young'uns have a nice, flexible way of thinking. That was the former detective in him. Even though it was a hypothesis that he didn't come up with, he still had the presence of mind not to dismiss it right away.
面白い話です。
That's some power plumber power.
それが立証できたら、日本の犯罪史始まって以来の空前規模の大量殺人ってことになりますよ。
The biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history.
ひなみ沢村の封鎖が解除されたらぜひ調べるべきだと思います。大石さんは県警にはまだ影響力は？
そこそこには。柔道部の名誉顧問ですからね。今でも夏の合宿やなんかにはちょくちょく出かけてます。
ひなみ沢村の封鎖解除がいつになるか分かりませんが、ぜひ調べさせてください。
わかりました。
大石さんはこのひなみ沢村連続開始事件、通称親代様のたたりを
Yep,
どう
confirmed.
捉えていますか？
Confirmed. How's it going, Raven? You doing well?
当時の署内は村人の圧力でぎゅうぎゅうでしてね。連続事件は存在しないというのが当時の公式見解でした。事件は個々でまたそれぞれに解決していると。
バカな。村の信仰に基づいた連続事件であることは明白なのに。
赤坂さん、そりゃ5年も続いて派手な最後があった今だから言えることですよ。
Nice, nice. Okay, in several ways.
あの
That's
当
good to
時
hear.
は偶然の事件が偶然にも綿流しの日に起こる。今年は起きないといいななんて感じだったんです。
偶然なものか。少女は初めから全て予言していた。
少女？
フルで理科です。あの子は私にその後の事件を全て予告してみせました。
赤坂さん、そりゃ本当ですか？
はい、あの子は言ったんです。翌年ダムの現場監督が殺され死体をバラバラにされるとのみにとどまらず、その後に続く連続事件を全て私に予告してみせました。
赤坂さんがその話を聞いたのは昭和の何年の話ですか？
私が少女と出会ったのは誘拐事件調査の折ですから。
バラバラ殺人の前年に？
Wrinkles formed between Oishi's eyebrows as he closed his eyes and began to digest what I had just told him.
赤坂さん、 フルで理科が神通力で未来が分かった。なんて話がなしだとするなら、これは
はい。
今さら私を驚かせるための作り話だ。
私は真実を話しています。連続開始事件は発生の前年にはもうすべてシナリオが用意されていた。そしてその予告の通り、フルでリカは殺されました。私ははじめ大災害による死を指したものと思っていた。でも彼女の死は災害ではなく殺人者の手による残忍なものであることが分かりました。彼女は殺されると言った。彼女は自分の死を具体的にあの時点で知っていたんです。
ならフルでリカはどうして逃げ出さなかったんですかね。仮にそういった死のシナリオがすでに出来上がっていたとして、彼女はそれを知り、かつ数年という猶予期間があったわけですよね。逃げ出すなり警察に相談するなりの時間はあったはずです。なぜ抗わずに自らの死を受け入れたんです。
わかりません。
フルでリカは村の年寄り連中に可愛がられてはいましたがね。両親を失った後は親類もゼロで身寄りはなく、親しい友人と肩を寄せ合うだけの孤独な生活でしたからね。戦う力も頼れる人間も身近にはいなかったのかもしれません。
彼女は自分の死に対して誰かに SOS を発しはしなかったんでしょうか。
村と警察が穏便な関係じゃなかったのは赤坂さんも知られるところだと思います。少なくとも私の耳にはフルでリカが自身の身柄の保護を求めてきたという情報はありません。あるいは自身が宗教的な生贄にされることに対し定感というか達観というか、そういうものがあったのかもしれませんね。
そんなはずはない。
I spoke decisively. At that time, she said it. She had definitely said that she wanted to live happily, that she wanted to spend her time surrounded by her dear friends. She hadn't given up on life. She had hoped to keep on living. At that moment, I became dumbstruck.
どうしました、赤坂さん。
いえ。
I fell into silence. Oishi folded his arms and began murmuring in contemplation again. Eventually, he stood up and headed towards the hallway to find the hostess, yelling that he wanted a pen and paper. When Oishi, noisy even though he was just thinking, left, the room immediately fell into a chilled silence. I stood up, and then I realized I was drunk enough to be unsteady on my feet. When I slid open the window, a beautiful yet somehow ephemeral moon drifted across the night sky. It was just now that I realized she hadn't accepted her own death. She wanted to keep living, happily and joyously. She had said that quite clearly to me, but I was a fool. I hadn't been asked explicitly, so I hadn't realized it. She had made it clear as day she didn't want to die. Wasn't that her cry for help? She didn't say as much as she wanted help. But even given that, it wasn't as though she wasn't looking for salvation. Without any family and unable to trust the police, she instead told somebody without any relation to the village, somebody from a faraway place, me. Help me. She had gone around and cut the phone cords. If I had made that phone call and learned of Yukie's death, I probably would have fallen into despair. If I was in that state, even if she was looking for help, her cries would have fallen on deaf ears. That's why, knowing everything, she had cut the phone cords. She wanted even a little time to seek help from me. Oishi, just before now, had lamented that one of the younger officers gotten mixed up in the case, having been erased because he wasn't there. I was feeling the same way. If only I was there in June of 1983. I could have protected her. In 1983, it would have been 5 years since the kidnapping took place. While raising the only daughter Yukie had left me, putting all my youth and passion into my work, honing my wits and courage, wrestling with difficult cases, nothing like my failings during the kidnapping incident would have occurred. I wouldn't have been slow to react in a one-on-one fight, and by that point I would have jumped into a foreign mafia-run gambling parlors where I'd learned to deal with automatic weapons, let alone handguns. I'd grown so much that in 1983 I couldn't have even compared to how I was in 1978. That's why, if I was by her side, I should have been able to save her life. No matter what conspiracy or foul plots drew near, I definitely would have protected her. She, even though sounding resigned, should have still been able to ask me for help. I just didn't realize it. I couldn't realize it. Just as I wouldn't have realized it if I was told Yukie's accident, I wasn't able to realize it. I wanted to cry. If I had taken her words to heart, I would have prevented Yukie's accident. And I would have been able to protect the girl whom I had owed a debt from, even a predetermined death. She must have been expecting that from me. I learned about the disaster while watching television from my house. Until I learned about that, I had forgotten about Himazawa. In order to recover from the shock of Yukie's death, I had tried to remove everything from that place from my memory. What an ungrateful fool I was. Even though in exchange for saving her, the girl had told me of a way to save Yukie, I was unable to accept her gratitude, and now here we were. She hadn't died in her sleep due to a natural disaster. She was split open while still alive, killed while suffering the disgrace of having her organs torn out. She must have known beforehand that on that day of that year, she would be killed in such a terrifying way. But even knowing what end awaited her, she was all too weak. A lone girl without anybody to rely upon, unable to seek help, had to swallow her own predetermined death, and left this mortal coil. She said she wanted to live. She said she just wanted to live happily. That's all she wanted. She didn't ask for anything extravagant. For any person that was ever born, it was the very basest of desires. She never said a peep about wanting money or that she wished she was in somebody else's situation. She had said it. That if all the deaths were preordained, then hers was probably also all according to the plan. She might have been a lone, frail girl, but I don't think that she would have accepted it all without at least putting up a fight. There must have been, in some small way, some form of resistance that she mustered. And with what she could muster, seeking my help was part of that. I howled. I stomped the floor. Why did I become a police officer in the first place? How could I call myself an officer if I couldn't save a single girl from the misfortune that was awaiting her? Was it because there was so much going on at the time that I couldn't process the fact that she was asking for help? Yeah, that's right. I was still green. If I was in that situation now, I would have definitely been able to help her. But it was already all over. Even if I wanted to settle the regrets she left behind, Hinamazawa, as a dangerous area, was still quarantined. Most of the people involved were already dead, with a few that did remain spread around the country, unable to be traced. The stage of that tragedy was still off limits as well. The police investigation was put on hold, and the case slowly being buried in the sands of time. Just like how I wouldn't have known unless Oishi had asked me about it.
Akasaka-san, 大丈夫ですか?
At some point, Oishi had returned with a notebook in hand. Until I saw the expression on Oishi's face, I didn't realize that I was in tears.
助けなかった。少女の助けに。
赤坂さん、落ち着いてください。
でも、もう全部遅いんです。少女は殺された。こんなにも無残な殺され方で、私は頼られたのに。救えなかった。救えなかった。
村人と良好な関係を築かなかった私にも責任があるかもしれません。 フルでリカが私にそれを打ち明けてくれたなら、私だって救いの手を差し伸べられたかもしれない。彼女が打ち明けに足る信頼を築けなかった。後悔しています。
Wow, even Oishi has regrets. When Oishi said the word trust, it weighed on me even more. Yes, she had given me her trust. She trusted me, meaning that she thought that I would have been able to ward off the fate of her foreseen death. She believed in that. I cried, I fell to my hands and knees, and began to bawl. Eventually, Oishi spoke quietly.
赤坂さん、悔しいですか？
悔しいです。
ならば、フルでリカの仇を取るに値する方法が一つだけあります。
そんな方法があるんですか
Oishi showed me the pen and notebook.
フルでリカの死を悼むためにも、せめて私たちで真相を。そうです。フルでリカだけじゃない。大勢が死にました。彼らの無念は計り知れません。でも彼らの死はあの大災害でうやむやにされ、今は捜査すらされることなく忘却の彼方に葬られようとしています。大勢死んだ。おやっさんも殺された。クマちゃんも消された。みんな犠牲になった。なのに警察は捜査もできないでいる。誰に無念が晴らせるのか。私たちだけなんですよ、赤坂さん。
私たちに真相が。
ええ、明かせますよ。連続開始事件の全ての現場を踏み、村の裏事情に精通する私と、連続開始事件の前年にフルでリカから重要な真実を明かされたあなたとなら。
でももう死んでしまったんですよ。
そうです。フルでリカは死にました。あなたが青2歳だったから救えなかった。
Oishi grabbed me, who was a wreck, and lifted me firmly by the lapel.
だからその償いとして真相を究明するんです。あなたの話が事実なら、全ての事件は計画ということになる。そうならば調べ方は全然変わってくるんですからね。私は今夜をかけてあなたと私の持つ全ての情報をノートにまとめ、明日の朝一番で元の部下たちと連絡を取るつもりです。あの事件を終わらせるものか。絶対に暴いてやるんです。
暴く
ねえ、あれから数年が経過しましたが、時効ではない。捜査は中断であっても終了ではない。まだ続いているんです。続けさせるんです、私たち。
ええ、
He's fired up. He's ready to go.
やりましょう。大石さん、このまま終わらせたりなんかしない。絶対私たちがこの真相を暴いてみせるんです。絶対に。
I demonstrated my resolve to Oishi by crying out those words, and just then,
Papa?
the sliding door behind me opened and Miyuki revealed herself while sleepily rubbing her eyes. My shouting must have awoken her. Then she rushed over to me.
どうしたのパパ。パパ、泣いてるの？
ああ、なんでもない。なんでもないよ、みゆき。
I tried hard to smile while wiping away my tears, and though Miyuki looked like she was about to cry herself, she extended her little hand to me.
大丈夫？
Aww. Aww.
また怖い夢を見たの？ 泣かないで、パパ。
And when she makes that gesture toward me, I saw the figure of another girl overlapping with her. And her innocent gaze and innocent expression felt frustratingly nostalgic, filling me with painful torment. A girl who couldn't be here because I didn't reach out to her. She borrowed my daughter's body to offer me words of comfort.
赤坂、泣かないでくださいなのです。
It might be a hallucination, maybe a convenient illusion formed from my selfless dreams. However, that was her voice. I'm certain I heard it. Rather than blaming me for a mistake, she was compassionate.
泣くものだ。
Yeah, that's not really fair.
泣くよりもまず私にはやるべきことがある。みゆき、パパはね、お前が生まれる前にひなみ沢ってところだ。天使みたいな女の子に会ったんだ。
天使？本当に？
ああ、可愛くて優しくて、みゆきにも会わせてあげたかったな。
Right, that's already an impossible wish. The future is already gone.
じゃあみゆき、その子とお友達になりたい。楽しみだな。今度みゆきも連れて行ってね。ひなみ沢に。
Even so, there's still something I can do.
ああ、そうだね。いつか一緒に会いに行こう。必ず。
That's also not fair. Yeah. Someday, I'm sure, we will see her again. That summer, Higurashi cried in Hinamizawa. Oishi and I vowed to bring the truth of this case to light and stood up. Everything ended in 1985. I, at least wanting to apologize, had searched for her grave. After the state autopsy, her remains were entrusted to one of the shrine's followers. In the future, when the quarantine in the Hinamizawa area was lifted, they would be returned to her family grave. However, unsure who exactly took the remains of Rika Furude until today, I couldn't even apologize to her. In the future, when the quarantine of Hinamizawa is lifted, all I could do then was wait until whoever that person is returned to the grave. What I could do right now was not apologize to her. Instead, until I was able to meet her again, I would reveal the truth and dispel her regrets. Even now, sporadic eruptions of gas from the Hinamizawa area meant that the prospect of the quarantine being lifted wasn't happening anytime soon. Most likely, it seemed she had no intention of meeting me again until I found out the truth. That's why the quarantine wouldn't be lifted, or so I thought. Until the day I grasped the truth. It was the following year. Oishi and I co-authored a book on a string of mysterious deaths leading up to the Great Hinamizawa disaster. I decided on the title. We get a title drop this late. Akasaka wrote Higurashi! That was because of those few days I was in Hinamizawa. The sound that I remembered the most was the cry of the Higurashi. I could only wish that based on this book, those people involved with that incident would refresh their memories and bring to light a new truth. And more importantly, that nothing like this ever happens again. I wrote this in the afterword.
この惨劇がどうして起こされたのか、私たちだけでは真相に至ることが叶いません。どうかこれを読んだあなた、真相を解き明かしてください。それだけが私たちの願いです。
Oh! God damn it! Oh! Okay. Oh! Jesus, that fucking hurts. Woo! This year, the quarantine on Hinamizawa still hasn't been lifted. how about that all cast review session, huh? Let's get that, let's get the mood flowing once more. Let's see, I think that was an extras. Alright, all cast review session, let's go.
この度は日暮の泣く頃に水暇つぶしをプレイしてくださり誠にありがとうございます。
Oh my god!
いやなんだ
She
か
did
ん
the
だ
laugh!
今回のシナリオは私の独壇場でしたからね。しかも渋いジャズ調なテーマ曲まで追加。これで笑えなきゃどこで笑えって言うんですかね。なはははは。
というわけで大石はそろそろ出過ぎなのですよ。
え、それはどういう意味ですか？リカブク。
Oh shit!
言葉通りの意味じゃ。
Yo! Look who's back!
あれだけ出番があってここまで出張ろうとは身の程をわきまえないにも程がございましたよ。今回はメインヒロインはリカちゃん以外
Oh my
みんな
god, that
出番ほとんど
emote.
なかったからね。
Holy crap! That fucking emote! That's real good! Oh my god, that's fucking real good! How's it going, Elrock? We are wrapping up Himatsubushi. This is sort of like the end of the game cast review session. Where everybody gets together and talks about what's going on.
今回は箸休め的なシナリオだからとは聞いてたけど、ここまで名字がないがしろにされるとは思わなかったよ。
Oh, that's fucking good. Hope you're doing well, Elrock. That is the best fucking emote. Swear to Christ, that's so good.
ミオンさんはまだいい方ではございませんの。
Doing your best. That's about all. That's the best we can
多
all
少
do,
は
right?
登場していましたよ。私とレナさんなんか気配も出てきませんですわ。レナはジャケットにも登場してますですからまだマシなのですよ。ということはつまり何ですの？私だけが一人のけ者で出番なしということなんでございますの？みぱーん。私だけこの扱いはひどいですわ。かわいそうですよ。きっとだんだん扱いが悪くなって最後には脇役に転落しているに違いないのですよ。
Even Rika is on Team Trash Child now.
そんなのあんまりですわ。
ニッパー There you go.
そんなことないよ。さとこちゃんのことが好きな人だって大勢いるんだもん。
Lots of people love
そんな
Satoko.
ひどい扱いになんかならないよ。ね。こんな扱い嫌ですの。きっと次こそ出番がいっぱいあると思うな。元気出してこうね。しかし今回のシナリオはおまけ的なシナリオとは聞いてたけど実際どうよ。なんだか随分話がややこしくなったように思うんだけど。僕には難しくてよくわかんないお話だったのですよ。何しろ信じられなかったのが連続開始事件が起こる前の年にもうリカちゃんがそれを知っていたなんて。ってことはつまり全ての事件は最初から予定されたシナリオってことになるんだよね。これは
かなり大きい情報だよ。
僕がきっと巫女なので、お社様のお告げで未来が分かったに違いないのですよ。
人間犯人説の私としてはそれは真っ先に否定したいところだな。
レナはたたり派なんで、ひなみ沢を見守るお社様の生まれ変わりであるリカちゃんにそういう神通力もひょっとするとあったんじゃないかなって思うな。
ダメダメ。人間派はそういう得体の知れないファンタジーは一切認めないの。事件は全て人間の仕業。たたりも魔法もイカサマもズルも一切なし。
Aimbots and cheat codes, people. You can't be using aimbots and cheat codes in your visual novels.
僕は魔法とか使えたら素敵だと思いま
I
すので
have
す
no
よ。
wine at the moment, and I also have no vodka, and I think that I need to remedy that tomorrow.
リカちゃんならなんとなくそういうのが使えてもいいかなって思うな。
まあ人間派にとっては最後の最後でとにかくこれはでかい情報だね。最初の事件からリカちゃんが殺され
The end
大
of the
災害
Konami
に
code,
至
you
る
get
までが全て
30.
シナ
Yeah,
リオ。
you failed the Konami code. Jesus Christ, Sayara. What the hell? How do you fail the Konami code even when all you play are bad rhythm games? Everybody knows the Konami code.
つまり丸々一つの事件だったってことが分かるだけで推理材料は格段に増えるんだから。
レナはこの予言こそつまりリカちゃんが神通力を使える証拠。つまりひなみ沢村には不思議な力が存在するんだってことの証拠になると思ってる。人間だけに起こせる事件じゃないことの証明になるんじゃないかな。僕は頭がこんがらがってわかんないです。
そうだそうだ、それよりもさ、今回リカちゃんが見せたあの表情、なんだか怖かったな。
みー、レナも驚いたな。可愛らしいリカちゃんがあんな笑い方をするとは思わなかった。
Yeah, I thought those kind of laughs were reserved for you and me on.
ねえ、ちょっとさもう一回あの顔をしてみせてよ。
嫌なこったなのですよ。レナも劇中以外ではしてほしくないな。
A blackout! Oh shit!
全員動くなでございましてよ。変な動きをしますとバルカン一斉射撃から誘導ミサイル連射、
Oh
そ
god.
してとどめにレーザーサーベルめった切りをお見舞いしましてよ。
This song again. Fascism is at it again!
さとこ、これは何の真似？
Well, look who decided to show up!
出番なし軍団、これよりお疲れ様会を占領させていただきましてよ。
なんだか素敵な登場をありがとう。改めまして皆さん、こんにちは。
いやー、まさかこんなところで出番があるとはな。思わぬ出番が嬉しいよ。さとこちゃん、ありがとう。
皆さんこんにちは。
What?
あらあら、身動きなさらない方がいいと警告しましてよ。
竜宮さん、
What are you
大丈夫ですか？
doing?
北条さん、ここまでやらなくても。
出番がなかった恨みは恐ろしいんですのよ。 本編の分まで聡子が大活躍なのです。
出番なしの恨みってわけか。くそー、いつの間にこれだけのトラップを。
ここがお疲れ様会の会場に選ばれた。その時点ですでに私のトラップにかかっていたということになるんではありませんの？
そうか、わかった。あんたの後ろで糸を引いているやつがいるね。いるんでしょ？出てきなさい。
Oh, it's you.
ハロロン、マイシスター。ごきげんよう。
しーちゃんだ。こんにちは。同じ罠に2度もかかってかわいそかわいそです。
やっぱりシオンか。
Shion always exists. Shion has always existed. That's kind of one of the things. It's like, just because she didn't appear in a scenario doesn't mean she doesn't exist.
何気に主役張ったシナリオまであるのにこのローゼ系。あんたやってくれるじゃないの。怪盗編前の折り返しおまけシナリオとはいえ、お姉だけに出番を許すほど私も寛大じゃないってことです。まあそんなわけでちょっと聡子を焚きつけさせてもらいました。シオン、あんた何が望みなの？安全圏の確保とでも言いますか。昨今ですね、どういうわけかお姉がじりじりと票を伸ばしてるんですよね。
共通ルートのみーちゃん萌えって意見が開発陣の間でも結構多いんだよ。
恋路の悪いあんたのボロが出て、プレイヤー処刑はやっと私の魅力に気づいてきたってことだね。聡子もたたり殺しで高評価らしいし、レナやリカちゃんには根強い固定票があるし、あんたの人気もとっくに陰ってるってことだね。そういうわけで不穏に票を伸ばすお姉や聡子をここいらで一つ叩き落としておこうと思いまして。
This is very silly.
こういう大仕掛けを打たせてもらったというわけです。
シオンさん、今何と言いまして？私も叩き落とすですって？
おちびちゃんは気づくのが遅いようで。そら！
にゃにゃにゃ
ーShe powerbombed her through the table back there. That's why it's upturned now.
さよならレギュラーの皆さん、こんにちはイレギュラーの皆さん。あんたたちメインヒロインはこれでおしまいです。
シオンちゃん、そこまでやらなくてもいいんじゃないかな。
まあまあ二郎さん、面白いからほっときましょうよ。私たち二人の出番がいっぱい増えるのよ。二郎さんは私と一緒。いや、
そんなことないよ。
シエ先生、先生までしーちゃんに買収されちゃったんですか？
ごめんね竜宮さん。シオンさんが次回のシナリオからは教えて千恵先生のコーナーを作ってくれるって言うからつい。
Okay, yeah, that's a dumb, funny type moon reference there.
さてと、誰から恥ずかしい処刑をしてあげましょうかね。大仕掛けを手伝ってくれたお礼に、聡子からかな。
それは許しませんよ。
Hello?
監督、なんだか珍しく頼もしく見えますわ。
聡子ちゃんに対する狼藉は私入江京介が許すわけにはいきません。私も脇役一派ではありますが、懐柔できると思わないことですよ。
ありゃ、この後に収録予定の実録聡子メイド教育着せ替え編の主役は降板したいと。
シオン様、この入江一生どこまでもついてまいります。
Don't be weird, idiot.
怪獣早っ。さーて、これで全て私の支柱ですね。これからはお疲れ様会もシナリオも全て私の思うままに進めさせてもらいますね。あれ、一人足りない。
シオン様、竜宮さんがいません。いつの間に抜け出したのか。
いた。
竜宮さん、さっき身動きしてはいけませんって言ったはずですよ。
レナちゃん、悪いことは言わない。抵抗しない方が無難だよ。
レナ、悪いけどこんなやり方おかしいと思います。
それは何の真似？目明かし編の台本？
Miyakashi script.
なるほど。登場回数を削られる前に確保しておこうという魂胆ね。無駄な抵抗を。
レナさん、無駄な抵抗はよしておとなしくした方がいいと思います。私をあんまり怒らせるとあなただけでなくお姉たちの処遇も変わってくることになりますよ。
台本を確保したくらいじゃ何もできないよ。レナ、ここは悔しいけど言う通りにした方が。大丈夫、安心して。この目明かし編の台本が加わったことでレナたちはこの状況を逆転できるの。逆転？一体どんな秘策があるというんですの？
レナさんは結構笑わせるのがうまいですね。なら試してみたらどうです？その逆転ってやつを試しに見せてください。
しーちゃんは甘えてる。本編にいくら出番がなかったからってこうしてお疲れ様会でこれだけの出番を得ているのに甘えてるよ。
私がいつ甘えたって言うんです？
しーちゃんは分かってない。たとえお疲れ様会だけといえども出演し他のシナリオにもあれだけ登場しておいてこの狼藉。そんなしーちゃんをね、許すことができない地獄の怨嗟がほら聞こえてこない？そうか、わかりましたわ。
そうか、ケイちゃんか。そうだよね、お疲れ様会はいつも出番なし。そのケイちゃんを差し置いてお疲れ様会占領なんてケイちゃんが許すはずがない。なるほど。で、その未だに収録居残り中のケイちゃんがどうやってここへ現れると？まさかケイちゃんを私たちの誰かが追い抜いたわけでもあるまいに。
そう思うのがしーちゃんの慢心だよ。
いけない。あれは赤坂編の収録ワード数票。知恵先生、レナちゃんを取り押さえて。
もう遅いよ。いよいよ出番だよ、ケイチくん。
Oh my god.
その声はケイちゃん？まさかケイちゃんは収録居残り中のはず。
そうさ、今まではそうだった。収録居残りのたびに残りワード数で誰かを抜けばお疲れ様会に参加してもいいよと言われ続けて、それでも他のキャラと比べても2倍あるいは3倍以上もある分量をこなすなど不可能というか、最初から参加させる気ないだろ音響監督さんよと思って諦めてきたが、ついに俺は抜いたあるキャラを。シオン、これを見やがれ。
え？
そう、主役として登場パターンが増えたシオンは当然喋るワード数もこれまでの2倍。しかもミオンとキャストが同じだからさらに2倍。その結果、俺はようやくついに居残り免除。そしてシオン、今度はお前が居残りだ。
嘘。私、次の目明かしでこんなに喋るんですか？
ケイちゃんが約500で、シオンは2700超え。これ普通のアドベンチャーゲームなら全キャラの総合係数だよ。
しかもこれにミーの数が加わるのです。
Yeah, I can imagine they wouldn't because the original wasn't voice
その
acted.
数やなんと、
聞きたくない
というわけでだ、レナ、感謝するぜ。月にすら見放され真の闇が地上を覆いしとき、漆黒の魔王前原慶一降臨。
I see, if it's like this, he can appear even if he doesn't have any character art. There's no character art or background art, so it's really easy on the production staff.
シオン、まるで自分が悲劇の主人公みたいな振る舞いだったが、俺から見れば実に滑稽千番。少しいい気になりすぎたみたいだな。お疲れ様会のたびに常に居残りになって異老の一杯にすらありつけなかった俺の怒りを、恨みを、悲しみを今こそ教えてくれるぜ。
なんだかケイチくん、悪の化身みたいだな。
化身じゃない、魔王と言ってもらいたいぜ。
We're not worthy to gaze upon Keiichi Maebara's true form yet.
そして俺が抑圧された悪夢の中で手に入れた闇の力は、俺による俺のために作り出したこの闇の世界では俺に。
ケイチくん、なんだか怖いな。
怖い怖い日暮らしの時間はもう終わりだぜ。
There it is, people. The age of the frightening Higurashi has come to an end.
ここからはポップでキュートで萌え萌えな日暮らしが始まるのだ。
This is where we're going.
なんですって。前原様、ぜひ私もお供に。監督は分かってるじゃねえか。じゃあお医者な監督をしもべに迎えた第一弾として我が魔力を見せよう。
なんなのこいつ。
高野さんがミニスカなナースさん、ナース服に。しかもピンクとかのギャルゲー的な色じゃない。分かってる。
You're still dreaming, dude. Don't worry.
ナースさんの分際で本編で一度もナース服を着ないとは笑止千万。さてと次の標的はと。
レナ、これじゃ全然形勢は逆転してないよ。新しいピンチを迎えちゃってるよ。
こんな真っ暗じゃレナにもどうしようもない。
さーて、次は誰にどんな衣装を着せようかね。手堅く制服、体操服、すく水の三段コンボでも決めとくか。
前原様、最高っす。その後はバニーさんにコンパニオンに、いえいえ、レオタード姿もいいですね。いやいや、いっそみんなお色気全開にしちゃうってのはどうでしょう。もちろん靴下は残すのであります。
それいい、分かってるじゃねえか。監督、俺やっとあんたと打ち解けられた気がするぜ。
いえいえ、前原さん、いえ、ケイ、私のことはこれからはイリーとドクターイリーとお呼びよ。
Oh my god.
ケイ、僕たちのことも忘れちゃ困るよ。
トミーとクラウドも常に K のそば
Tommy
にありま
and
すよ。
Crowdo.
トミー、クラウド、ついに揃ったぜ。四天王、ここに見参だ。
ついに K を筆頭に悪の四天王が揃い踏む。暗黒を得てついに地上に降臨を果たした漆黒の魔王前原圭一。
How high am I right now? I'm trying to gauge what's going on.
その魔力は絶大にして無比。この闇では誰にも立ち向かえない。屈するほかない。ああ、ヒロインたちはこの闇を抜け出せず、魔王たちの思うがままに恥ずかしい衣装を次々と強要され、
Not smelling eggs,
永遠
thankfully.
に等身大着せ替え人形の扱いをされてしまうのか。最高だぞ、もっとやれっていうか、すく水はちゃんと旧タイプだろうな。競泳型だったら許さんぞ。
ダク、シオン、あんたのせいでこうなったんだから、あんたなんとかしなさいよ。
大丈夫ですおね。暗闇の中で真の力を得るのはケイちゃんだけじゃないです。
え、そんな都合のいい見方、ここって
チョコザイな、園崎シオン。ちなみに校長先生を期待してるなら残念だな。男子本会ここに極まれり、男たる者最善を尽くすべしとお墨付きがちゃんとあるのだ。もちろん新登場の赤坂さんに頼ろうとしても無駄だぜ。昨日からお嬢さんを親類に預けて夫婦水入らずで温泉旅行だそうだからな。つまり八方塞がりってわけさ。
甘いですねケイちゃん。安易に闇の世界を生み出して妄想全開スチャラか万歳ってというわけで、知恵先生、そういうわけです。
真っ暗でよく見えませんけど、なんだか知恵先生の服装が変わってますわね。何ですの？あの両手にいっぱいの剣は。まさかそんな。それはいくらなんでも反則。
それ以上は内緒なのですよ。みぱ
前原くん、少しお板が過ぎたようです。これ以上は教会も見逃せません。
I wanna quit.
ちょっと待てよ。これはないだろ。映るだろ。作品違うじゃねえか。おい、こんなのなしだろ。そのでかいのはまずいって。早すぎる。あんたその動きは。
改めましてこんにちは。この度は日暮の泣く頃に水 暇つぶしをお楽しみくださり誠にありがとうございました。
Yep, a very dignified end. I think you already know this, but Higurashi When They Cry is a type of visual novel without any choices. Therefore, compared to adventure-type visual novels with branching routes to take, it's much closer to the experience of a book or a movie. Because of that, there is the opinion that this should not be called a game, per se. If you're just watching it like a book or a movie, Higurashi When They Cry isn't really a game. True. That's why, as you know, there are a lot of mysteries referenced during the course of the experience. When you challenge those, this work will become a proper game.
プレイヤーの皆さんにはこの謎に満ちた物語をさまざまな角度から捉え吟味する権利があります。例えば劇中に散りばめられた謎について推理をし、それを発表して反響を得たりすることもまた楽しいかと思います。
In any case, the next chapter starts the answer arcs. We're tentatively calling it Mayakashi. But answer arcs are a sad thing. Based on what is revealed, all the possibilities that you were allowed to imagine until now will suddenly become refined down to a few. Based on that logic, we think that right here, before the answer arcs, is probably where people can enjoy the work we call Higurashi When They Cry the most. If by chance, while you're still reading this, you have the Mayakashi chapter at hand, please enjoy hypothesizing, theorizing, and fantasizing to the fullest before you start. That's where the real charm of the series takes place. Sorry for saying something so impudent. There's nothing better we'd like for you than for you to enjoy Higurashi When They Cry.
それでは素敵な夜長を。ひなみ沢村で皆さんをお待ちしていますね。レナと遊んでくれるなら一緒に宝探しに行きたいな。はう。
And like we said, that does it for the question arcs. The mystery portion of the series is, for the most part, over. When we move to the answer arc, things are going to be answered, but maybe not in the way you think they might be. How that is, for the first timers, I'll just leave that up to your imagination. So, thing or two before we head out. We're going to get a spoiler/speculation cast put together with myself, Raven, Jetstorm, and Sayara. We're going to be doing that probably sometime very soon. We're going to do that before we actually start the answer arcs, so we will be streaming that at some point. We don't have a date for it yet. We're going to work that out, so just watch the old Twitter and you'll know when we do that. But we're going to do a roundtable of basically all the arcs that have happened so far, and then speculation on what you think's happening next. So once I have a date for that pinned down, I'll announce it on Twitter, and then we'll probably start the answer arcs maybe a week or so after that. So that gives us a little break. In the meantime, also, I will be streaming a special arc from the Steins Gate visual novel Linear Bounded Phonogram. There's a story on there that is written by Kotaro Uchikoshi that I'm going to stream because I know that there are a lot of people that watch my streams and sort of in our friend circle that like both Steins Gate and Kotaro Uchikoshi. So I'm going to be going into that blind at some point too, as again, just watch the Twitter and you'll know when we're going to do that. So, we'll be getting all that stuff taken care of and announced soon. Like I said, just watch the old Twitter.